How is everybody today? Um, so we are on Theological Milk Part B. Um, Today is about the probability of God, the chance that God exists, or is there a God? And as such, there's not going to be any Bible references for this um, because it's all philosophy. So I want you to think for a second and give this some careful consideration. The modern prevailing theory of the universe includes the Big Bang. There are several problems with that. One of them is that they cannot prove that time can be warped. That theory requires time warping and stopping and ceasing to exist. So that is not uh, intellectually provable at this point. So that leaves us with we have time and it's infinite, or the Big Bang theory, which everything gets scrambled in time, including time. All right. So because that's not provable, we're left with time is infinite in the past. So we have infinite time in the past, and for all intents and purposes, as far as we have been able to measure in space, we also have infinite space, infinite time, infinite space. So we basically have infinity squared. Okay. You can get a little bit more detailed with the equations if you choose to. Um, but that's a pretty big thing. And then we have um, what often many science-minded people choose as their basis of their belief. You have evolution, and the old definition of evolution, where the theory that uh, creatures could adapt and become greater creatures over time, versus the newer theory of evolution, which is basically alleles change over time, or proteins and DNA change over time. Okay, those two theories are different and, and exceedingly different, but both yield the same result. Okay, so what you have is infinity squared with the possibility of evolution. What does that give us? Well, we have humanity, we have a great variety of different creatures, we have uh, quite a few things actually. And then there's something called a singularity of intelligence. And that is an intelligence that can continue to develop its own intelligence and grow. Um, and a singularity of intelligence is important because, for all intents and purposes, compared to humanity, that is a God. Okay, a God that can grow its own intelligence and grow its own ability to perceive and to think, and which entails also growing its ability to do things and to live. So that's a very important concept. So what is the probability of a singularity of intelligence? Well, that's a good question. Right now, humanity has the ability to manipulate itself via genetics, genetic manipulation and testing and improvement. Um, we haven't really done a whole lot of that yet, but we have. They've been able to develop viruses to go in and take care of diseases. They've been able to develop a, or they're in process of developing a HIV immunity um, genetic change, and a number of other things. The so we have the ability of humanity to become singularities of intelligence. We know that's possible. or we can see the probability of that. And and then you have things like artificial intelligence, AI, you know, machine intelligence, supposedly, uh, which a lot of people would say, oh well, that's science fiction, and whatever. Well, maybe it's possible in the future. Quantum computers and everything like that. Maybe that something like that could develop. We don't know, but we can see the possibility of a machine intelligence that can continuously learn and continuously build itself. That's what fiction writing basically is taking an idea, a concept, a probability, and writing about it, what it could become. um, so infinity squared, evolution, which depends on millions and billions of years, which that's I mean, infinite time yields a result. um, and then the singularity of intelligence. Well, we're just one planet. How many planets are there? Well, if space is infinite, there's infinite planets. Maybe. You know, we don't really know. But we know there's a percentage chance of a singularity of intelligence. And we know that that singularity of intelligence could be mechanical, or it could be organic, or there's also a possibility of some other form. So, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with a situation where if evolution is true, then there's at least a 1% chance, or at least a chance of one singularity of intelligence being created, and that singularity of intelligence becoming, for all intents and purposes, a God. Now, do I believe that? I believe in the Bible. I'm not. I'm a young Earth. Uh, I hold a young Earth viewpoint, so I don't believe in evolution per se. Uh, Breeding program, sure. Changes in DNA, sure. But I don't believe in the theory of millions and billions of years of evolution. I just don't. Now, the whole reason why I bring this up is because you have a number of atheists and agnostics which believe that evolution is the answer for everything and there are no gods. Philosophically, from a philosophical standpoint, dealing with the infinites that we are dealing with in our reality, and not shying away from it, and looking at, you know, the supposed evolutionary cusps that we stand on. Like, we're at the point where we can modify human genetics. We're at the point where we can modify machinery to where it becomes more intelligent than us. Um, then there's not really a good reason for humanity to deny the possibility that a God exists and that has been created in the past, because the past is infinite. Okay, we already can see these things in reality, looking at it from an evolutionary standpoint. So when you deal with God concepts, what kind of God are you dealing with? Like a very intelligent singularity of intelligence God, or perhaps one of the old pagan gods, which are not that much more developed than humanity. Um, the only difference being that they live until they are killed, which is typically a pagan god trait, that they'll live until they're killed. But if they're not killed, they'll live forever. You know, so you're not dealing with something that's truly immortal for the majority of the gods, and for the rest of them, you are dealing with something that's truly immortal. So, what are the chances of that? Well, all I can say about that is that would depend on the singularity of intelligence that's created. What does it want to do? Does it want to continue to live, or does it not? And, It depends on how well developed it is. Did it develop with a stable personality or not? You know, and I mean, those are a lot of questions at that point. We're already at the point of God, but how can it become a greater God? You know, and so philosophically, unless you believe that the universe is as it has always been, and unless you believe that you know gods really don't matter to you because you want to do what you want to do, and that's just the way it is, then you have to make some admission that, hey, even the probabilities in science lead toward a viewpoint that a God will be created or has been created in the past, or evolved, or whatever you want to call that. So, and even when you're dealing with the probabilities of a God, you're not dealing with just a probability of one. Okay, it's a probability of a bare minimum of one. What you're actually dealing with, because you have infinite squared, is you're actually dealing with like the concept of a whole civilization of gods. Okay, and that is a great deal more than what most humanity wants to think about, or at least a civilization of singularities of intelligence, which that's pretty big. Um, Compare that to the Bible. The Bible is all about creating new immortals, new singularities of intelligence of that nature. Okay, that's basically what angels are. That's basically what the promise of the resurrection is. And there are some religions which are based on that concept, but there's not that many. So give yourself some time to think about this. It's not, I haven't heard too many people talk specifically about this kind of thing, um, and dealing with probabilities. You get on the internet and nobody really wants to bring something like that up because everything points to, even if there's a tiny, 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 tiny percentage, the infinites make that much more abundant than what we want to admit. So think about it, give it some consideration. There's a lot of people out there with a lot of different gods that have already decided which one they're going to serve or which one they're going to believe in. And like I said in the last video, I chose Yahweh. That was my choice. What do you choose? Who do you choose?